give me the central bank perspective on this. I mean, is this, all recessions eventually end, so is this simply the ending of a recession, or is this really the turnaround to a sustainable growth in the euro area?
I mean, these chairs are more fragile than the Economic and Monetary Union right now
this
is.
Chair, yes, it is very fragile, actually.
Yeah.
But you're balancing very well on it.
That's what we are used to do, yes. Now, I mean, I can fully subscribe to what Olli just has outlined. I mean, what we see that the incoming data are underpinning what our view is about the economic situation in the euro area. And we have this view in the central bank, let's say, since the end of last year. We have a very, very gradual recovery in the course of this year. This will improve further next year, but it's a slow recovery. It's a recovery that's positive. After 6 quarters, we are out of the recession in the euro area in the second quarter. That is both supported by export as well as by domestic demand. So I think we have made progress. And you can see this on a number of fronts. For example, the unemployment rate, it's 12%. That's unacceptably high. But the numbers, if you look at the details, the numbers of unemployed people is no longer rising since May this year. But we have a higher participation rate, and this leads to higher unemployment data. So if one looks a bit at the details, it shows that we are stabilizing, we are bottoming out, and it will further improve in our view in the next year, if we continue to do what we need to do, as Olli rightly said.
Well, you laid out a long to-do list, and let's just focus on the first part of it, which I think is a very important one, that of the progress in the banking union, because financial fragmentation has clearly been a large part of the problem. And I'm going to come to the two of you in a second, but let me just stick with you, since you are the ECB is a very important part of this. You, I think, Jörg, have said that banking overhaul is the third and maybe last chance to repair confidence in European banks. You have to get this right. You have to get this asset quality review right. How are you going to do it, and how are you going to make sure that it is done right and it's not another, squashed results that no one believes?
I mean, I think it's worthwhile, since we are on this side of the Atlantic, to see what is the US experience in dealing with, let's say, troubled banks, non-performing loans, bank balance sheets repair whatsoever. I mean, the biggest difference from the US to Europe is nowadays that the US has federal institutions to deal with troubled banks. They have the FDIC that can wind down banks. They have the Fed that has done a credible stress test exercise and forced banks to recapitalize. They have the US Treasury that created TARP by providing guarantees. And for a second, one can make a thought example and think how things could have unfolded if, let's say, the state of California would have to deal with Wells Fargo on its own, or if the state of New York had to provide all the guarantees for Citibank instead of the US Treasury. And this is the situation that we have in Europe, that we have nations, member states, deal with banking crisis on their own. And this leads to a situation, if one sharpens this, that the taxpayer subsidizes banks implicitly in good times, explicitly in bad times, and it commits suicides in crisis times. And what we need in Europe is to create federal institutions that can prevent from local crisis becoming systemic. And here the answer is the banking union in all its elements. It's the supervision and the resolution. And you are right, before we start the European banking supervision at the ECB, we will directly supervise roughly 130 banks and banking groups that cover 85% of euro area bank assets. We will do a comprehensive balance sheet analysis, which will consist of 3 elements: This is a risk review of the portfolios, because it can differ in one country, it's ship financing, in the other, it's commercial real estate. Second, you have a bottom-up asset quality review, and based on this, you have a stress test that is more forward-looking. And this will end in one figure per bank in a possible recapitalization need. And you're right, I have said that for a number of reasons, and I'm not blaming any institution, for a number of reasons, 2 stress tests that we have done in Europe did not reach the aim to restore confidence in our banking sector. And this is why I think it's the third and the last chance for us to do this. And this is at specific interest, of course, to us, because we want to know which banks we are going to supervise, because the reputational risk in the future lies only with us. But secondly, what is more important, we are convinced that bank lending will only kickstart and reach levels to which we like to see it to support the recovery if we have made significant progress in repairing bank balance sheets. This is the real aim of the exercise.
And